Hello there, Ray here. We got a brand new Java snapshot today. That's 25W17A, and this will be for the next upcoming full release of version, or probably 1.21.6. As Minecraft's coming out with smaller drops rather than saving up a bunch of features and putting it out as a big update. Now, all these dot versions can be very confusing compared to before, when there used to be kind of big numbers like 1.10, 1.5, 1.18, which I'm personally not a big fan of, but we're also getting our change where we're having our snapshots for Java Edition on Tuesdays instead of Wednesdays. But on the poll that I did in my post tab on my YouTube channel, I actually asked you guys, what do you guys think of this change? And it was actually pretty curious to see that the majority of you guys didn't care if it was Wednesday or Tuesday, with the second biggest group being people that weren't even aware that this change was even implemented into the game. But let's take a look at what changes the snapshot comes with. The locator bar at the bottom of the screen is now in the default snapshot rather than having to turn on the experimental snapshots related to it. This means we're going to see this in the full release of the next version. So rather than showing your progress of XPs, if there's somebody within range, they're going to show up as a colored dot. The color is random, and the dot will move around depending on where the player is at. Notice that once the player moves off my screen, it is no longer visible. So if it's not visible, and if I go ahead and crank up FOV, you notice that it doesn't actually make it reappear on screen. This is because you can only view players if they're within the 120-degree range of the player's view. So this does not take into account your FOV settings. And if the player happens to be above you or below you, there's going to be a little arrow that's kind of moving and pointing the direction where their player is at. So it's saying, hey, there's a player in front of you, but it's underneath of where you're looking. And then the same thing when you're looking downwards. And this also applies if you're directly underneath of the player or above the player. And you can see it also shows up in spectator mode, so you can easily find players if you're trying to spectate them. But if the player you are looking at goes into spectator mode, they will vanish. But if both players are in spectator mode, then the indicator will show you where all players are, including ones that are in spectator mode. Now there's a few ways you can hide yourself if you don't want someone to find you on the locator bar. You can put on any of the different types of skulls or heads that are inside of the game of Minecraft, and that will make you just completely vanish from the bar. Or if you put on a jack-o'-lantern head, this will also help with that. Or you could just crouch, which will also make your name tag vanish if you're behind blocks, which also makes a lot of sense. Or if you just give yourself the invisibility effect, then you won't have to worry about showing up on the bar. But if you do not like this feature, you don't have to worry about it in single player as never show up. But in multiplayer, there's always an option to turn it off with game rules, which is called locator bar. And by default, it's set to true. You can set this to false. And now it will never show players on the locator bar. And instead, your XPs will show up. That's one of the downsides to using this, is that the little progress that you're making on your current level of the XP bar doesn't show up as long as there is a player in view. And this can be problematic if you're trying to see how many more little XP orbs you need to take in order to progress to the next level. Maybe you need to enchant something and just need a few more XPs, and now you can't really see that. But if you take in any XPs, then the bar is going to switch over from acting like a locator bar to acting like a XP bar. And only about 5 seconds after you got your last XP orb into the bar, will it then convert back into a locator bar. It seems they did this way so that there's not too much clutter on the screen if they added a whole new bar to the bottom there. But what do you think? Do you think they should came in with a second bar in order to showcase this locator thing? And do you think the XP being hidden is going to be problematic? Now this locator bar can be applied to any entity in the game, so you can make the locator bar like point to the nearest mob or something if you're trying to make like a mini game map. And this is all done using the waypoint, which you can do to even modify the color of certain players' little dots. So I can change the color to something else. Let's go with yellow. And now you see it shows up as being yellow. And you can also use this command to list out all the different players that are online, and you can see which color they show up. And you can even click them to teleport directly to their location. Now it seems the way they set this locator bar up is that it won't be kind of exploited by players' clients. So people shouldn't be able to use this to like find you if you are actually hidden. And I'm sure if there's any bugs that are related to that, they'll try to get rid of those so that people don't feel like they're being stalked if they are taking the appropriate actions in order to be hidden. And as the player moves away from you, the little dot's going to get faded out. This kind of lets you indicate how far you are away from a player. So now you can see the dot just turned into a little square. If I go a bit further, it's going to change into a little plus sign. But it appears that the dot will never vanish and will stay at this point no matter how far you are. As my player is currently out a couple million blocks and it still shows where the player is. So it seems you can find players from like infinite distance away, but this can all be changed with the command if you want to. Now this is a slight change from before where it would slowly fade so it's harder and harder to actually see it, but it seems like they want players to be able to find them from a great distance and maybe even with no limits whatsoever, which I find a bit strange. I feel like they should not show players if they're like over 1,000 blocks away or something. But what do you think about it? Now speaking of settings, if you come down here, they added a new setting which is cloud distance. Currently it's 128 chunks by default. So if you take a look at the clouds, we can see the clouds out really far. I normally have these turned off because if I go sliding across the sky and I'm recording and then I record a second part, it looks kind of weird when the clouds are just jumping across the sky over time. Let's go ahead and turn it down and see what happens. Now it's 70. Looks like maybe you can't just see as far. And let's drop it down even more. Oh yeah. So it seems just to remove the distance clouds and it kind of fades them out like with fog. And if we go all the way down to 2 chunks, I don't see any clouds above me, but I guess there's still a possibility of a cloud being there. They also made happy Ghast smarter so that when they pathfind, they'll avoid dangerous blocks that could kill them or damage them. You can also now use dispensers to put on the harnesses automatically onto happy Ghast, similar to using dispensers to put on saddles onto mobs like horses. But it doesn't seem that using shears on them will work and remove them, which would normally work if you would manually do it. Now last snapshot we weren't able to shift click leads onto boats with chests because this would just make us access the actual contents of the chest. So now if you want to access them, you can go inside it and then open up your inventory in order to check them out, or shift click without a lead in your hand. And many other bugs were fixed this snapshot. Most of them have to do with things not looking quite right and removing some problems that cause crashes. Bedrock Edition also got an update today where they got the same lead mechanics that Java got last week, where you can lead together any 2 leadable mobs or entities, so you can make flying airships just like in Java Edition. I am changing my snapshot streams from Wednesdays to Tuesdays, and I do my testing on my testing server that you guys can even join in so you can watch me do the entire process. And you guys can get your very own Minecraft servers so you can have fun playing with others in a single world. You can do this all very easily by using Bisect hosting, and even get 25% off just by using code RAY. I've been using them for over 10 years and they've been running all my servers smoothly. Thanks to all you guys who took advantage of this offer, and I'll see you guys all over at my testing livestream. Bye bye!